Welcome, everyone. I'm Susan Campbell, and today we're going to be talking about conflict, preventing and resolving conflict. And the thing that interests me so much about this general subject is differences. We live in a world full of differences, and differences tend to push buttons sometimes, because if I care about you and you want something different than I want, maybe I won't get what I want, or maybe I'll interpret that difference to mean that you don't value me that much or something because you're not willing to give me what I want. So we have to live in a world with differences. That's pretty obvious. And there's a number of different kinds of differences. And I'm going to be talking a little bit first, and then I'm going to be surveying the group. And that's where I want you to be on camera, and we'll do a hand raise thing. And this is actually an exercise that I haven't done with a group on Zoom. I used to do these back in the 60s and 70s with very large groups, this kind of survey, asking how many people this and how many people that, but you'll see when I get there. So even people, let me just start with differences in dyads and particularly intimate relationships. You know, I did this study of couples. I interviewed over 100 couples back in the 70s and wrote a book in the 80s called The Couple's Journey. And that came up with 5 stages that intimate couples seem to go through. And one of the important things that came out, at least for me, was yes, you start your relationship based on perceived similarities like lifestyle compatibility. You generally have the same values and level of consciousness, so you can communicate with each other, that sort of thing. So, you know, in order to even form any kind of a relationship bond, yes, you need quite a few important similarities. And there's the first stage, which is for bonding and creating a common vision. And I call that the romance stage. There's like developmental tasks of each stage. But no matter how similar people are, I'm pretty sure most of you have had this experience, no matter how similar people are, eventually when you get to know somebody, there'll be some way in which you differ significantly. And so I call that the power struggle stage. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to struggle about your differences, but it does mean that now differences come up and the relationship feels quite different than it did during the power struggle. And there's inner work to be done to learn how to work with those differences and re-own your projections. And we're not going to go into that today, although just I mentioned the word projections. So whenever there are differences, it's extremely common to project your worst fear onto the situation. And that's the territory of trigger reactions. And I'll get to that in a minute. I think you know that my current work is mainly focused on what to do when you get triggered and how to sort out your stories, your fear stories, like my voice doesn't matter when there's a difference versus the actual reality, which is that person didn't listen to you and agree with you, but that does not matter. I mean, that does not mean that your voice doesn't matter. We bring fears from the past into the present. And so that's the phenomenon of projection. So I'm just giving you a definition of the word I just used. So the biggest thing, also doing that research, subsequent research, the biggest thing, I just want to make sure I've admitted everybody, is differences in attachment styles. So you have one person who gets overwhelmed when there's too much talking, and the other person uses talking to connect. So we'll just call those two different attachment styles. I'm not going to go into the technical terms right now. But a lot of you have probably been in that kind of a polarity, and that can feel, still admitting people here, that can feel the most threatening, because it's your attachment style is connected to your early childhood wounding. Like, I became the kind of person who felt more safe and secure when I'm by myself. I became that kind of a person in a family of origin that had maybe my voice not being heard very much, my not getting very much attention, my getting the feeling that I got to take care of my own needs. So that's generally called the avoidant attachment style. So I'll give it the label. So, and then the more preoccupied, anxious attachment style was conditioned to perhaps think, I've got to really fight to get what I need here. And somehow that worked for them, getting bigger and being more of a pursuer to get your needs met. And that somehow worked in some ways. So we get into adult relationships, and we have these different attachment styles, and it's really hard not to misinterpret the other person's cues. Because if you want to pause and have a little break from talking, if I'm the anxious, preoccupied person, that's going to feed into my abandonment fears. But if I'm more the kind of person who likes to talk and stay engaged when there's a conflict, and you so I'm that kind of person, and you're the more avoidant person who gets overwhelmed more easily. And that's something that's hard. It's hard for the more anxious, preoccupied person, the person that says, tell me more. No, you can't quit now. We're right in the middle of something. It's hard for that person to hear that the other person's simply overwhelmed. They've simply no more bandwidth to take in information. It's just very, very hard to understand somebody who has a different attachment style than yours. So it takes that deep work that I've called trigger work to really connect with each other in an intimate way around that. And we'll look into that toward the end of today. I'll just say a few more things about the kinds of differences that cause the most conflict. I did this book back in the early 80s called Beyond the Power Struggle. And this was based on a lot of work I did in corporate America, as well as with couples. And I came up with the 7 dimensions along which people differ. And this is more personality style differences. So I'm gonna just ask for show of hands on some of these differences, just to warm you guys up to who's in the room here and what the commonalities are. So, do you know how to use the hand raising function? It's under reactions. So take a look at it now, and it'll say right at the bottom, it'll say raise hand. And then after you've raised the hand, it'll also say lower the hand. So if you just kind of leave that up right now while we're doing a kind of survey. So the first dimension that causes a lot of conflict in relationships is the saver versus the spender. And that doesn't always mean money, but let's think of it in terms of money. You just have this sense of, there'll be more, it'll come. So there's this large exchange with the world for the spender. The saver is much more mindful of like wasting water as well as saving money, that sort of thing. So how many people, just show of hands, identify more with the saver style? And could you do the hand raising, because it's a little easier for people to see, I think. But if that's not easy, then go ahead. So that's the saver. I'm still admitting people here too. Okay, well, I'm a saver too, so I've got to put myself in here. Okay. And just think of some of the relationships you've been in with the other type and the stories you've made up about the other type here. And now let's lower our hands, the savers. And who are the spenders in the room? Let's see who the spenders are. Would you raise your hands if you dare now? Because we had an awful lot of savers. It looked like a majority there. Do you mind being in the minority? And sometimes I'll ask people in each group, so you can lower your hands now, but we're just getting a feel here. What do you like about being a saver, and what do you like about being a spender? So if somebody wants to share who's a saver, one thing, we'll just get one share on that. What do you appreciate about that way of being? Anybody want to say anything? Oh, yes, go ahead. Carrie.
I would say that it gives me security.
All right. Thanks. And somebody who's a spender, what do you like about being a spender?
I will share. I think it's just an attitude of abundance, that you know that more will, if you spend more, it's like a flow of resources.
Hearing you say that, that's what my ex-husband always used to say.
Uh-oh.
No, it's good. I learned some things. I learned that underneath, sort of right underneath the surface of the saver part of me, there was a spender trying to get out, you know. So sometimes opposites attract for those kinds of reasons, but you know, we won't go there at this moment. Okay, the next dimension.
Can I just say, I think I'm a saver and a spender. Like
Yeah.
you mentioned saving water, those kind of things I save because I want to be kind to the planet or whatever, but I might spend money. So, you know, and I have a similar thing with thinking there'll be more money and spending that, but I save some things, like I don't want to waste resources, but money I'll spend.
Yeah, that's a common differentiation now. So thank you for making that. And there,
and I raised my hand for both for that same reason.
Right,
yeah.
Right. You know, these are simplistic divisions. They're really very generic, but somehow with some of the dimensions, they really will fit a particular relationship. You know, that it's a pretty consistent theme once they get into the relationship. And maybe it'll only be about money. You know, everybody's maybe into, you know, saving resources, except for the money part. So let me get to the next one is the get it done person versus the do it right person. Now, this was extremely significant in corporate America. The get it done person was like the manager and the CEO, you know, quick decision maker, doesn't have to be perfect. So that's the get it done. The do it right person takes longer to make the right decision. They're more the scientists, the engineers, the quality control people. Now, a lot of us are not in corporate America, but you can kind of feel what that difference is. How many people would identify more with get her done? No, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I am one of those, get it done. And you know, one of the advantages of us is, you know, we do get a lot done. Disadvantage might be, well, we get, you know, criticized for mistakes and so forth. So let's look at this. All right, and so we can lower our hands here. And how many people identify with more of the do it right style? Got a few more of those people. And think about the stories that you make up about the other. So this is another one of the questions I'll ask when I'm in, in a big group trying to resolve conflicts. What are the stories you make up about the other side? So let's take a risk, and somebody who's a do it right person, what's a story you might be making up about the other side?
I really admire them. I really admire the other side, and I kind of wish I was more of a get it done people. I'm too much of a procrastinator, so I kind of beat myself up about it rather than, yeah.
Good. Thank you. Anybody else? Stories?
I tell them what's going to go wrong, and then when it does go wrong, I'm like, oh my God, I saw this from day one.
Hey, all right. And how about the get it done people? What do you make up about the do it right people? Anybody willing to share? Well, I see a couple hands up, but is that Adrian, you have a thing to say about, or you just still had your hand up? Okay.
Sorry, I just still had my hand.
Sure. Well, I make up that if I don't make this decision, let's say I'm in a relationship, if I don't make this decision, maybe I better just do it myself. Maybe I better just buy this. This is actually, it's a girlfriend of mine who's like me. I'll just buy this couch. My husband will never be able to agree on it, because he's got to look at 5 more stores. So, that's, sometimes you just have to override that person, because it'll never happen if I don't do it myself. Of course, that in this particular friend's marriage, that definitely leads to conflict. I wouldn't recommend that methodology. Okay, I'm just gonna do one more, because there's there's another survey I'd like to get to, because this one I've done with groups before. The next survey is more kind of new for me. Well, let's look at the parallel player versus the face-to-face player. It's a little bit like those 2 different attachment styles. The face-to-face player in a relationship, and it could be a friendship, work, or romance, really likes a lot of one-on-one face time, particularly sharing feelings. Whereas the parallel player, if I'm a parallel player, I like to know that you're there, but I can be doing my projects in the garage, and you can be doing your projects in the house. And I feel good that way. And it's like, if you're happy, I'm happy, but I don't need a lot of interaction. So we got that distinction, parallel versus face-to-face. How many people, and I know I've been different at different stages of life. So how many people at this stage of your life, and go down to the raise hand thing, are parallel players? Let's look there. Okay. I think we're in the minority. Let's lower our hands. How many people identify more with the face-to-face? Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to lower our hands here. So that's just an example of personality style differences. And then there are differences in beliefs. And right now, like the tribes, people forming into tribes with different beliefs, like pro-vax, anti-vax, people who are on blue or red sides of the political spectrum. How many people have in your life, first of all, some important relationship where this other person who, maybe it's a family member. I know I have a brother who's more into like Donald Trump and that sort of thing. Although I asked him, I said, do you think Trump won the election? He said, no, I don't go that far, so we can still talk. So how many people have a close person in your life where you are in different tribes in terms of beliefs? So raise your hand. Let's just see that. Now, these are painful. All righty. And one thing I want to get into now here's the activity that I've never done before with a small group on Zoom. And it's called the differentiation design in group facilitation practice. And the point of this is you may be in the same tribal belief with these people that you just, like that you just raised your hands with, we're all savers, let's say, some of us, we're all savers, but on another dimension, we're going to be opposite. We're going to be in opposite camps. And just to get that into our bones, I want to do another final show of hands survey before I get into some like tools for preventing conflict and that sort of thing. So I'm going to be asking you about beliefs pretty much. I've just got a few things here that I'm actually kind of curious to know, where people are at. So I'm going to ask how, for example, the first one is that you find value in astrology. Okay, so how many find value in astrology? Don't pay any attention to it, or even skeptical, that sort of thing. Okay, so how many people find value in astrology? Raise your hands. And how many people don't pay much attention to it or are in somewhere the other side of the thing? Let's see that. And just begin to notice who's, we're gonna be seeing now who's with us and who's in a different side. And it's gonna be all over the place, but I want to actually experience it with a group. Okay, so the next one is vitamins. Let's lower our hands for this one first. Everybody lower the hand. How many people take quite a few food supplements, vitamins, pay attention to that versus the other side is going to be, so that'll be first side, but I want to give you the choices here. The other side will be, I'm kind of skeptical of the vitamin industry. I mean, you could be both and, but you're a little more on one side or the other, or you just don't, you believe that we should get all of our nutrition from food, that sort of attitude. So pro supplements and vitamins, raise your hand. Let's see there. And there might be some people here that you're wondering, are they different or similar to you, which is what I'm doing right now. Hi, Adrian. Hi, Brian. Okay. So we're a little bit in the majority there. Let's lower our hands. How many people are more like vitamins are not my thing in some way, shape, or form? No, the other side. Okay. Good. And let's lower the hands. Just at this point, is anybody having any insights or thoughts at this point? I'll just let you get in here. I don't have anything more I need to say either. So let me keep going.
I have a
Yeah.
just like an automatic internal, especially around the astrology, because I've been made fun of around astrology so much. So it just like brings up right away. Okay, I'm sure those people are gonna be like, oh my God, she's one of them, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very helpful to me. Realize that each one of these can bring up associations. And yes, I mean, one of them categories brought up associations for me, the vitamins one, because I have a difference with my intimate partner on that. And Monica, did you have a comment?
From the Department of what?
I said, Monica, did you have a
Oh.
comment?
Okay,
Oh,
hold on
yeah.
just a sec. Hold on just a sec. Trying to.
Who
I
is
think somebody
speaking?
needs to
Oh,
mute.
Judy, are you speaking?
She's on the phone.
Oh, please mute yourself. Alrighty.
I didn't.
Next
Anyway.
category.
Should I call back at another time, Judy?
Let's see if I can mute Judy. Oh, she is muted.
I am.
There we go.
All right.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that for
Yeah.
me, I notice with myself and with other people that they can flip from one extreme to the other. Like they might be a get it done person, but then something bad goes wrong. So they abandon that strategy and they go with the do it right strategy. And then something goes wrong with that strategy. So they flip back. It's almost like the two extremes are two sides of the same coin. And I get that that probably doesn't apply to this discussion today, but I just wanted to say that was what was on my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say some people are still working something out, you know, if you're kind of still working something out over your lifetime, you know, well, I'm to this, now I'm to that. You know, balance is a constant, finding balance is a constant balancing act. So it's fairly common for people to flip like that. And it's in a sense, not very functional, but it's necessary for your growth, I think, a lot of times. Okay, let's go to the vax thing. And I did three of these 3 calls about the to vax or not to vax topics. Some of you were in on those. How many people, regardless of let me know, forget about whether you got vaccinated or not. How many people are somewhat skeptical of the vaccine or the vaccines? And then I'm going to ask, how many people really trust that that's helping you and helping you like not get sick, that sort of thing? I mean, you can also, I suppose, be on both sides, but see if you can answer this. So raise hands. How many people are somewhat skeptical of the vaccines? Raise your hand on that one. And lower your hand. And how many people are think that, you know, you've gotten the vaccine and that's probably going to help? Okay, I'm looking here. Thank you. Okay, here's another one. Maybe I'll just do this one as the last one so we can move along here. If my intimate partner had an affair, I'd probably forgive this person, versus if my intimate partner had an affair, and there's a lot of factors here, I understand, but just, you know, you're kind of like your first reaction. No, maybe you would change your reaction, but I know I'd probably forgive, versus I couldn't handle that. That would be the end. Okay, if my intimate partner had an affair, I could forgive. Let's start with that one. Probably forgive or move on or work it out. How many people would say yes to that? And let's take our time to see where we are on this. Lower our hands. If my partner had an affair, it'd probably be the end, or it'd be awfully hard to ever let go of it. Okay. Now you know who's who here. If you're looking for love. All righty. So I think this exercise is probably much more effective the way, we used to do it in person, and you'd clump in a corner with the people and you'd talk to them. There'd be a few questions you'd ask to kind of bond with your people, and then there'd be another dimension and you'd split with those people and they'd be on the opposite side of the room and so forth. I didn't get that feeling here on Zoom, but thank you so much for doing that experiment with me. And if you ever have to do some conflict work with a large group and you want to try this, let me know and I can help you work out that design, because it's a fascinating design, but it's how often do people lead, large groups of 50 or 60 people anymore? It's not in my world anymore. All righty. So I wanted to show you some statements that I call the 15 statements necessary for relationship success. And I believe if you're easy with these statements, you will have much less conflict in your life. You will be able to deal with differences more cooperatively. So that's my whole point here, is first of all, accepting differences and having a little bit of sense of humor about them, which I think we've developed that here on this call. Now let me show you a screen share and we'll take a look. Wait, I want to get rid of one thing here. We will take a look at how well we do on these 15 statements. Oh man, here it is. So can you make these statements is now this first paragraph we can ignore because there's a scoring. It's a little instrument and there's scoring involved. We're not going to do any scoring. We're just going to take a look at each statement and ask yourself, how often is this statement part of your normal vocabulary? First one is simply after somebody says something to you, either inside yourself or out loud, you're able to start with hearing that I feel. So I can hear what you said and notice what goes on in me before I pop off with an automatic response. See, these somehow, some of them help you slow down and pay attention to what's really going on. And this first one, that's what that does for us. Hearing you say that I feel. So the example I gave, hearing you say, when are you going to fix the fence? I feel some resistance coming up in me. So somebody says, when are you going to fix the fence? And you do some, or a lot of us would just do some automatic thing like an excuse, I haven't been able to get my helper over here in over 3 weeks. Some kind of putting the other person off rather than checking in, or get off my back, will you? Automatic kinds of resistance phrases rather than noticing that that's coming up and being choiceful about what comes out of your mouth. So just know, how are you with that statement? Next one, I'm sorry. No, that's the third one. Second one is, I want you to listen and hear me out before responding. Being able to assert that, to set the tone, set the context, or sometimes somebody has interrupted you, but you're able to state a clear want. And that will often, unless it's a high conflict situation, that will often have the other person go, yeah, I tend to interrupt. I think I can do that. So asking for what you want really can be effective sometimes. And this is one of those times, I think. Do you ever do that? The next one is a simple I'm sorry, realizing that what you said was hurtful, you didn't mean it, you were careless, and if I had it to do over, I would. Simple thing, very wonderful for repairing small ruptures in a relationship. That phrase, and that's in the book Getting Real, there's a whole chapter about that. If I could do it over. People almost always welcome that sort of apology. Now, here's a really good one, number 4, for when somebody says something that you really don't agree with. It helps you stay present and somewhat calm without immediately reacting to a statement that possibly is a little triggering, or you go, how could that person think that? But you buy time, you get yourself centered, and hopefully you nurture genuine curiosity by being able to say this. Tell me more about why you feel that way or why you think that. Or let's say there's a difference in wants, because that's the biggest thing in negotiation is two people want very different things. So the first step in negotiation is to see if you can get below the level of positions, like, I want to take our vacation in the mountains. Well, I want to go to the beach. It's too cold in the mountains. A difference like that. You could argue about that, or you could say, tell me more about why. And then you get to the, it's too cold, or I like the shops in the mountains, and you get the reasons why. And once you get underneath the positions, you just find out a lot more about the other person. But that's kind of like a negotiation skill. Sometimes it's just also useful, this phrase, as a getting present. Like, I'm just going to lean back and listen and take something in, so I don't do my automatic thing of having to have a quick retort. See, the Getting Real practices are all about not being so automatic with our communication, slowing down, paying attention. Hey, what's really going on here? And if I'm in reaction, what can I do to be more in presence? And so the tell me more kind of prompts you to just stay curious for a while. Then you can react if you must. But there's another statement, I think, down lower here, which actually, I'm not sure it's in here, but there's another statement I want to add on here that's not one of the 15, which is, I see it differently than you. This would be after the tell me more, and you get the difference. I see it differently than you do. May I tell you how I see it? Or I want something different. May I tell you what I want? So that's not on here, but that should go 4A. That should be right after 4. Now here's another one. Similar to if I had it to do over. I didn't mean to hurt you. What I wish I'd been able to communicate is. Okay. I'd like to make it up to you, to make amends. How many people ever think to offer that? And I think it's really an important option, especially if you really have like damaged somebody's property, for example, or kind of damaged something. Ask, is there any way I can make it up to you? Now, number 7 is the beginning of a clearing conversation where you set a context. First, you have to find out, I'd like to talk to you about something that's been on my mind. Is this an okay time? I mean, that's the full way to do number 7 here. And could we talk about something that's been bothering me? Sometimes another part of the preamble, which I call a pro-relationship preamble, is I want to do this so I can get back to feeling trusting and close with you. I think if I can just be heard, I can get there. So that sort of sets a pro-relationship, a friendly context. Setting context is a very important thing when you're trying to clear the air, like letting the other person, not just popping off with, when you did that the other night, it really pissed me off, or it really pushed my buttons. First, I have some feelings to clear. Is this an okay time? Or could we sit down and talk about something that's on my mind? Is this an okay time? If you don't have that in your repertoire, ask yourself, what's your resistance to that? It may be that bringing something up that's on your mind, you're afraid it will make things worse. You think you've tried it before, but you haven't tried it before with as much self-awareness as you're bringing to it this time. That type of thing. Just don't be fooled by your fear conversations in your mind. Those kinds of things. Another one's kind of similar. I'm feeling unfinished about that recent conversation. Could we talk about it? And sometimes somebody will hit you strongly with something and you don't have an immediate response. And so many people, when that happens, they just get angry at the other person, well, you expect me, to blah, blah, to know everything. Well, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do today. Why do you need to be angry at them? Why don't you just say, I don't have a response. I need some time before I respond to you. If you have that, you cut down on a lot of needless conflict when you're with somebody who, let's say, asks you for something that does require a response, but it doesn't have to be now. Oh, here's the one that I mentioned earlier. So it is on the list. I see it differently than that. May I tell you how I see it? So we can move along. And here's a thing there's different personality styles. I think want, like I want, I want to go out to dinner. And you would expect the other person. See, some of us would just expect the other person to come back with, no, I don't feel like it tonight. But some people aren't able to do that. They actually get slightly triggered when you even say a want, because they think they have to conform to that. So sometimes you got to throw them a lifeline. You got to help them out. If you know that you're with kind of a passive person who doesn't know how to assert their needs. See if you can throw them the lifeline by saying, okay, this is what I want, but how's that work for you? Or what do you want? So many of us don't think that way because, well, gee, I would just tell them that didn't work for me. Not everybody's like you. Now, I put this appreciation statement on here as a ingredient for relationship success. See, that's what we're going through here, the 15 statements necessary for relationship success. So it builds a kind of goodwill, security. It builds a more secure bond when you appreciate people some way, unless they really hate that. But you know, some cultures really get embarrassed and shamed when you call attention to them. But I think that is not generally true in the culture that most of us are in. Most people get warmed and nourished by appreciations, and that can build goodwill to kind of help you not take some of the differences so seriously. But it's like when people are judging each other and criticizing each other, when there's that kind of a mood, pretty soon almost everything you say gets taken wrong, you know. So building some goodwill when it's sincere is always a good idea. Oh, and this one's the same as one of the other ones. I want whatever I want to go out to Chinese tonight. How's that work for you? Some of these are a little redundant. I feel crummy about what just happened. Can we talk about it? There's a kind of humility in that. And then finally, I notice myself getting defensive. I think I'm getting triggered. So how do you think you did on that? Just were those, like a lot of you been working with this material that I teach for a long time, maybe, you know, maybe you scored 100, you know. Any comments or questions at this point?
I got a 20, so that means I'm thoroughly brainwashed by Susan.
Great. There's a good kind of brainwashing. It's called letting go of your old conditioning and finding what's true in the present moment.
I have used phrases similar to those. I don't know your work that well, Susan. I just bought one book recently, which I'm excited to read, and just discovered you really recently. So yeah, but I've done some NVC and radical honesty stuff and some other like relationship communication-y type of things. So yeah, I kind of was, yeah, they look great, and I've used similar phrases.
Good, you did well then. Yeah, there's these kinds of things are being taught all over the place now.
I like the appreciation. Thank you very much. I actually love appreciation.
So I think I'd like to see if anybody has any like issue with somebody. I mean, I won't do any deep work with anybody today, but maybe a little bit of a dialogue. If you have an issue with someone in your life, or you have an issue of figuring out how to use some various these communication tools. I've got a couple other things I could share, but I think I want to see if I can involve you guys if there's something on somebody's mind here. Is there any like interpersonal issue that's on your mind?
I do have one, but I don't want to be sort of, you know, I kind of, other people might have one as well, but I had something that happened yesterday, if anyone doesn't have one.
Okay, thanks. And I couldn't tell who was talking. Who was that?
Oh, sorry, that was me, Sue.
That's Sue?
I have one too. This is Lori, if you,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, either way.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get to both of them. Lori, why don't we talk to you first and then Sue?
Okay, sounds good.
We'll just have a little conversation. So what is on your mind?
Well, I'm dating someone new and the communication is sporadic. And so when I don't hear from him for a couple of days, I get anxious. Because I'm like wondering what's going on. And then this is a pattern in the past, even after a couple of days go by, I always hear from him eventually. So But during this, like after a day or so goes by, I start to get like, well, I haven't heard from him and I haven't said anything yet. So I'm trying to figure out if I was thinking about if I was going to say something, how would I approach it using that list?
Okay. My gut feeling is that your issue is learning how to deal with uncertainty, learning how to deal with the unknown, which would be better advice for you than using some skillful sentence.
Ah,
How do you react to that?
yeah, I kind of
Say more. I want to say more about
sorry.
how do you learn to deal with uncertainty? I mean, we're all wondering that, I suppose, but what's your reaction to my saying that?
I definitely agree, because I don't know, because the uncertainty is not knowing
Yeah.
what's going on. Like, why haven't I heard from that person? Why haven't I heard from him? Is he busy? Is he thinking about somebody? Like, I just would go through a whole, so yeah, the uncertainty of not knowing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's two ways to deal with uncertainty. There's the inner approach and the outer approach. And so let's talk about both. The inner approach is looking at how it triggers you to not know. Now, you said, is he seeing somebody else? That's or is he busy? So, that sounds like questions you could ask him, in the outer approach, but let's take the inner approach first. So what's your worst fear that this absence of communication means? Does it bring up a fear?
It brings up more like, I must have done something wrong. That's what happens. Like,
Yeah.
did I say something wrong? Did I?
Yeah. And that touches my heart when you say that. I think most of us would call that a vulnerable disclosure, and you're disclosing it to yourself now. And so I would call that a tender part of you that needs some love and some reassurance, but it's there. You can't give it reassurance like, oh, everything's going to be okay, because you don't know. But the reassurance is,
I don't think it was that good.
this is a normal, could somebody, let's see, whoever that is, 415 person, please mute yourself, or I can mute that person. You feel that, did I do something wrong? And see if you can, and the rest of us too, as we're listening here, if we have any insecurities like that, see if you can embrace that as a tender, much loved child. That is kind of probably the child part of a lot of us. And it's just there. It's just it's part of our conditioning, and it creates pain. But to learn to accept a certain amount of these kind of emotional pains is what it means to grow into maturity, to be able to have an adult relationship. And I call it to be able to weather or tolerate or accept the normal pains of adult relationships. We all need to accept those normal pains, but that's not easy. So accepting that fear is there, that it's a tender thing. And, I kind of want to, put my hand on my heart, or, oh, honey, yeah, that is a tender part of me. And I'm not trying to get rid of it. I'm trying to own it so it integrates with the rest of me, including the part of me that can accept it. The part of me that's more nurturing, and that's the part that a lot of us don't have developed, the good mother archetype. So when I say much loved child, I'm suggesting some things that aren't fully developed, perhaps in you and in most of us, but by going there with yourself. So that's the inner approach. Okay. Like, what it boils down to is, I'm okay even when I have these insecurities. They're understandable. I kind of even know where they might have come from as a child. And I just appreciate and value all those parts of me, including that hurting part that sometimes I wish wasn't there, but I have that. So that's the inner. The outer is, do you have the courage to ask some questions? Hey, when I didn't hear, no, flat out, plain old authenticity. When I didn't hear from you, some of my old insecurities came up, and I got to ask, did I do anything to put you off? I know my mind says I know that's probably not the case, but I had to ask it. Oh, did I? So you ask it. Is that big? Would that be a big risk for you to do the outer approach and ask?
It would be a little bit difficult to do because I'm very like conflict avoidant and I don't want to make any waves with anybody. But I think I at this point would be able to.
Cool. Yeah. It might make the other person feel uncomfortable, and those are the normal pains of adult relationships. My belief is sometimes you go through something uncomfortable with somebody, and okay, if some people run the other way, all right, well, that person's not ready for a relationship. But some people, it's like, well, we just went through something together and it was just a little awkward, and you don't even think that in your conscious mind, but it just bonds people a little bit to go through something that's not so smooth all the time. You know, too much of the dating world is everybody trying to make it smooth for the other person, and nobody growing and stretching. And then pretty soon you go, that's a fairly boring, I think I'll move on, without even realizing why, because there's no growth. All righty. I think we only have time for just me and Lori today, but I just want to thank you so much for stepping out. Have you ever been on one of these calls with me before?
No, I have not.
Wow. Well, and you just took a risk and spoke up. So I just want to appreciate you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to think about this.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay. So it's about time for us to close. As you guys know, I do these every month, except May is going to be the last month for a while because I'm taking 3 months off, June, July, and August, to, the way I like to say it is, write my memoir and clean out my attic. And it has to do with me taking on what I think are some of the developmental tasks of the final stage of life, which is where I'm at right now. And it's really cool, this stage of life. Okay. Don't worry about it when you get here. All righty. Say bye for now and hopefully see you next month.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.